BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, I'm Rory Bradshaw and this is the Scottish Football Podcast. All the news, views and analysis you need on Wednesday the 9th of April. And about last night, well, it all started so well.
Caroline Weir must be it is! Scotland in front! Amazing stuff! And Caroline Weir becomes just the second Scot ever to score against Germany.
Scotland routed by a rampant Germany despite that goal. We take a look at the championship and the runaway leaders.
Oh, wonderful! A 4-for-4 cup. It's a brilliant free kick. Top right-hand corner. Magic stuff. 4-0 Falkirk.
Falkirk on the verge of back-to-back titles. Plus, there's a big match happening on Thursday.
Raskin forward to Dessers. Deep inside their own half. It's been fired forward by Raskin to Czerny. Czerny's in behind the defender. He's one-on-one. Huge moment in the tie! And Czerny rolls it home!
Rangers v Bilbao is coming up fast and we start the preview here.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
Yeah, hello on this Wednesday. It was a mixed bag for Scotland last night. First half great, second half we don't need to talk about it. We've got two great guests with us. First of all, we're joined by Rory Loy, the former Rangers and Falkirk striker. Rory, you good?
All good, thanks Ray.
And we're also joined by Gemma Fay, the Scotland goalie who was working for TV last night. Gemma, take the game apart from last night. How's life for you?
Well, if we could have stopped it after 45 minutes, it would have been great. Unfortunately, we can't. And Germany did what Germany do, which is they got a little bit angry and annoyed at their first half performance and then ran a bit riot in 25 minutes in the second half. So, yeah, bit of a sobering second half for most Scotland fans.
Yeah, 25 minutes is generous. It was 15 really, wasn't it? It was...
Right then.
Yeah, sticking the bit in straight away. So we've got lots to discuss with Rory, Gemma, but we need to begin with last night where Scotland were taken apart in the second half by Germany. Like you said, Gemma, it was all going so well in the first half. Scotland, from what I saw, with a better team and that Caroline Weir goal go deservedly in front. When you were covering the game last night, when it gets to half-time, we're 1-0, do you expect Germany to come out with that big second half, or do you think we could go do it?
No, of course you expect Germany to come out with that big second half. They're not third in the world for no reason. But I think what was disappointing is the first goal, just prior to the first goal, there was a slight defensive mix-up which gave Germany a sniff. It resulted in the corner where we defended the set pieces really well in the first half. And it was almost a desire from Serchi to get up there and score that header. She was in between Jenna Clark and Sophie Howard. Now, Jenna Clark towers above her. But we got her positioning all wrong. She scored that goal. And from there, they just took that momentum and they ran with it. And we kind of crumbled a bit. And the things that we had done so well in the first half just dissipated. And we were in shock, I think, is the best word to describe it. And we started the things that have been frustrating for the last couple of years, little defensive errors, positioning wrong, not being tight enough in the box, allowing players time to get shots off. All those things started to creep in. And you have to say some of the finishes from Germany were sublime, but the way in which they were allowed to dominate that second half is just not good enough from Scotland. And in the first half, they had fixed a couple of things that were wrong in the game against them in Tannadice on Friday night. They dropped an extra centre half in there, which meant that pocket of space that Linda Dalmaha had been having fun in was kind of closed down. They sat the block lower when Germany were in possession of the ball, which meant it was really difficult for Germany to break Scotland down. And defensively, I don't think Lee Gibson really had a save to make in the first half, and they frustrated Germany and they caused them some trouble in the counter attack, and that was perfect the way in which they did that. But we always knew that Germany were going to come out and do something different, and straight away they made some changes which seemed to have an immediate impact. And you could tell at one point the ball came off the sideline, and I don't speak German, but I could make out what the coach was saying, which was when you get the ball there, switch it diagonally. And straight away, Nuskin, who Erin Cuthbert's teammate at Chelsea, comes on. She gets the ball, her first touch, she switches that ball out wide to the left-hand side. The ball gets played in, and then there's a goal. And then from that moment on, Germany just absolutely dominated. And it wasn't a case of what Scotland could do in response. It was how many Germany were going to score. That being said, I do think that Scotland should have had at least a penalty, which we didn't get.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah, I think it was a complete penalty. Like she's taken Kirsty Hansen out.
Yes. So
when you saw it, you're like, penalty.
Yeah. And no VAR, obviously. When I saw that, I thought that was a penalty. And do you think that's us just clinging on for something because of how bad the second half went, or do you think that would have had a big effect in the game, Gemma?
I don't think it was necessarily about having a big effect on that game. It's about what happens later on in the competition. So our closest rivals for relegation from this is Austria. So Austria beat us 1-0. They lost 4-1 to Germany. They lost 2-1 to the Netherlands last night, which echoes our score. So this is about goal difference. So if it goes to head, I think it goes head to head first of all. So if we beat Austria by more than one goal, then we, I think, would stay in the division. However, if we don't, it goes to goal difference. So regardless of if Germany scored 6, however many we score matters. So moments like that, I don't think we can just brush off and say, like it's about last night's game. It's not. It is about what can happen further on in the competition. And we did have a couple of chances to get a couple more goals. It wouldn't make a difference to the result last night. Scotland were going to lose that match as soon as that first goal went, and I think you just saw a swing and a change in momentum. And I've faced Germany several times. I know what that's like. I know what that feeling's like, especially when you're in Germany because the crowds are intense. And yeah, you heard it from Caroline Weir after the match. Proud of that first half, but that second half just can't happen. And unfortunately it did.
Yeah, the atmosphere was incredible. I was listening to some of the game on Radio Scotland, and Amy Canavan did a link and you just couldn't hear her. It was just the drum, everything. The atmosphere was so good. Rory, when you look at Scotland in general, obviously don't have a manager just now. We've had a lot of youngsters bloodied in the last few games, 5 defeats in a row. Where do you think we go from here? Like Gemma said, we've got big games in the Nations League to kind of keep our status against the Netherlands and Austria coming up. What's next for the Scotland women's team?
Well, I think, not dissimilar to the men's team, you look at the quality of the teams they're playing in the top division, and it's not easy at all. Mick McArdle's somebody I worked with, somebody I rate as a coach, somebody who I think's very well, somebody who speaks well. Whether he's the long-term answer, I'm not quite sure, but I think it's about getting through this group. Play Austria next. Fingers crossed we can go and do something, as Gemma says, and better the result certainly from over there, and get ourselves in a position where we can stay in the division, and then look at the bigger picture after that. But I think at this moment in time, the people in the background need to be doing their due diligence, whilst the team on the pitch work on staying in the division.
Yeah, and Gemma, for you, what can we avoid relegation in these next 2 games? I think Austria have got 3 points just now, so we've got nothing, obviously. Yeah. So what happens? Do we manage to stay up?
I think it's a tough ask. I was saying this last night to Alamont and co-coms. If we could put together parts of performances that we've had across these games, we've got a really good chance. If we have a complete 90-minute performance, we have an opportunity. And we lost to Austria, and that was a really not a strange game. It was Mick McArdle's first game in charge. He made a lot of changes. I'm not sure he got the balance of youth and experience right. We had 2 clear-cut chances in the first 10 minutes, and after that, it was scary. It was scary, and I think there was a lot of fear about what was going to happen against the Netherlands. What we saw against the Netherlands was the Netherlands, to be honest, they should have won by a lot more, the chances they had, but they didn't, and we managed to score. That gave us some confidence. It took us into the game against Germany. Now, we had moments against Germany, more moments than we had against the Dutch. We played better against Germany, even though they won 4-0, than we did against the Dutch. And there was some key moments where we had opportunities in those games. We didn't convert, and then Germany went and scored. And then you put the first half from last night in. if you can take all those moments and stick them together, I think we've got a really good chance against Austria. I think we can beat Austria. Whether or not we beat them by more than one goal, that's the question. But I think for the future of Scottish women's football, the challenge with the Nations League is that the B level and I mean this in the nicest possible way and with no disregard to the other opponents, the quality of players in the team we have is too good for there, so we're not learning and developing in that level. So you need to try and cling as much as difficult it is for these types of results. That's where you need to be. That's where you need to learn, and that's where you need to grow. So we need to do everything we can to stay in this division to give ourselves the opportunity to keep developing.
And final question on this, Gemma.
The manager? No idea.
No, that. Well, yeah. Who would you like to be the manager? But also, do you think over the past 5 years that this team is massively underachieved? I remember being at Hampden for the Ireland game when we had such a big chance. And like you said, the players, the quality we got, the fact we're not qualifying for major tournaments and getting the breaks. Do you think we've underachieved?
Yep, I do. And I think if you ask most of the players, they would say the same. I think they're an honest bunch. And I think they know with the quality that they've got in their team and the players that they've had over there for the last 5 years, that they fully believed that they would continue that momentum. We qualified for our first tournament in 2017, and I remember that was my first and last tournament, and I remember retiring, looking at the team and looking at what was in the pipeline ahead and being really excited that we created a platform for consistent qualification. They did it again in 2019, and then from then on that they have flattered to deceive in many cases, and I think that there's several factors that lay into that. But I think this team should have been at the last two major tournaments. They've been good enough to be at the last two major tournaments in terms of the quality of players, but they haven't managed to do that when it counts, and that's the main thing in international football. Sometimes there's been an emphasis, in my opinion, too much on style of play versus getting results. And getting results is the most important thing in international football by hook or by crook. And it's finding that balance between developing a style of play and identity and getting results, and we haven't managed to do that. So I think that you've seen a lot of that golden generation step away from the international scene. Big losses, the likes of Kim Little, huge loss, massive loss. Jerry Beattie retiring, and some others, and now you've got some youngsters coming through, and it's getting that and striking that balance between how many youngsters you get in the team and how many of those more experienced players you have in there. And everybody wants to bring young players through. I get it. I absolutely get it. But there has to be a balance there. If you get that wrong, you're not going to get the results that you need.
Let's talk the Championship. It's not quite as tight at the top as we're used to. Falkirk can seal the title this week if they win and Livy fail to. Rory Loy, Falkirk, deserved champions, aren't they? They've been so consistent throughout this season.
Yes, they have. And, any team that wins a league over the course of 36 or 38 games, whatever the league consists of, deserves to go up. I remember my first ever job with the BBC, Ray. I worked at Firhill during Partick Thistle's League One title party. They beat Falkirk 5-0. That was my first game.
One of my favourite games ever. Watch that in the house due to COVID restrictions, and I remember Brian Graham scored from about 30 yards, and I woke my 6-month-old baby up by screaming so loudly. So, good fond memories of that, Rory.
There you go. So that night, Falkirk, were pretty much guaranteed the playoffs, you thought, and they went on to not even finish in the playoffs, to finish fifth. So this particular stretch over the next couple of weeks, at that point in time, about 4 years ago, seemed a million miles away, like it was never going to happen. Yet bringing in the right people behind the scenes, and now the previous board of directors, Ray, and the previous people who were working behind the scenes, I'm sure they had all good intentions, and were making the decisions they felt best at the time. However, it was poor decision after poor decision after poor decision. They were building on quicksand. They were giving managers the job with no foundation to move forward and be successful on the pitch. Jamie Swinney, the CEO, and a number of other people behind the scenes have come in and given John McGlynn and his backroom team a foundation to build from, and my goodness, has it paid off.
Yeah, and every time I've done this podcast, we've chatted a lot about the Championship, and you can't really mention Falkirk without the Scott Arfield signing. That's been the little sprinkle of gold dust in the top, hasn't it, Rory?
Yeah, some things are just meant to be, and Scott Arfield, who has went away between his first and second stints and had an unbelievable career in football, has come back, and to be honest, I could quite easily still play in the Premiership for a team, but I think he wanted to come back to Falkirk and help them get back to where he feels they should be. Obviously, the Craig Gowns connection as well. I was a young lad when Craig unfortunately passed away that day, and I remember the kind of shockwaves through Scottish football and our age group as well, especially. So the success he's having, and the goals he's scoring, and being such a big part of getting Falkirk back up as well, it's just kind of sums up Falkirk's fairy tale season, really.
Is Scott Arfield younger than you, Rory?
We're both 88s. I think he might be 89, so he wouldn't thank me for saying that. But we played in the same 21 Scotland team anyway.
Yeah, it makes you feel old, doesn't it, when you see him still playing? Are you tempted to chuck on the boots for the last few games for them?
No, well, I wish. No, I don't know if the Falkirk fans would thank you for that these days, to be honest. I really don't. But no, I look at Scott Arfield, and I said recently that when I was a young boy at Kilmarnock, from 16 to 18, I was an apprentice. I ended up going across to Rangers. If I could have one moment back in my career, I would have probably stayed at Kilmarnock. I look at Scott Arfield, and I'm not saying I would have went on and had the career Scott Arfield's had, but I watched him rack up 100 appearances for Falkirk, which I reckon I would have done at Kilmarnock by the time I was 21, 22. Instead, I had 0 appearances because I was stuck in a system. And Scott Arfield's went on and had a fantastic career, and all credit to him. He's a great guy as well. Obviously, known him through that kind of period of time in football. So, he's done very, very well.
Great to get an exclusive that if Rory Lloyd stayed at Kelly, he would have played in the Premier League for Burnley. That's the soundbite we want there. Thank you, Rory. And Gemma, obviously, Falkirk, champions elect, you would say. How do you see them doing in the top flight? Do you think they need to strengthen a lot, or do you think they'll be able to put a good shift in?
Yeah, I think that Rory's touched on it there, that off the field they've been really prudent, and they've started to build an infrastructure and a system that will allow them to succeed where they want to go. That I just was reading recently their latest board report to the fans. They're studious in building a budget for the Championship and also the Premiership next year. They're not going to do one for League One because they're mathematically safe. But that gives you an insight into but that honesty and transparency around about sharing with the fans, sharing with their people what it is they're doing, where they're targeting, is really important. And they talk about providing stability and a budget there to be spent. And they've started to do some signings already. They've signed Gary Oliver, triggered his 1-year extension, Tom Lang. Off the field as well, Alan Fraser brought in his chief scout. His experience down south and likes of Ipswich, Southampton, etc. is going to be invaluable. So you see that they're building the infrastructure off the field to allow them to succeed on the field. And that, I think, is really important. I think that will benefit them when they step into the Premiership, in terms of having that strength and depth of off-field support to be able to support John McGlynn on the field. And you see that he's just signed a long-term extension to 2029 as well. So the one thing that folk are going for is stability, and I think what that means is that when they step back up into the Premiership, they intend to stay there, and that's what they're building the club around. So I think they've been working on that core team. Yes, I think probably they need to strengthen just in terms of having depth within their squad. That's the kind of key thing that you find is that often teams in that kind of bottom six have a core squad, but it's that strength and depth, isn't it, that they need to look for. So that'll be the work that they're doing at this moment in time, I imagine.
First season's massive. Stay up at all costs and then kind of go from there. Without getting ahead of ourselves or looking too far down the line, they will go up. First season, stay up by hook or by crook, finish 10th by a point, stick with the manager as they absolutely should and they absolutely will. Just stay in the league the first season, and then you can go on and build and make yourself a well-known face and a regular contributor to the Premier League.
Yeah, and if we talk about staying in the league, the battle at the bottom is incredibly tight. The Championship, Queen's Park, essentially in free fall, host Dunfermline on Saturday. Queen's Park in bad form. You've got financial backers
Thistle
pulling out.
mathematically safe yet, right?
Thistle are mathematically safe.
Right, okay.
The greatest team in the world to have appointed Ian Barraclough as a sporting director. That is happening. But it's nice to see the team that put you up the Scottish Cup in free fall. So I'm enjoying the Queen's Park bit. Rory, do you think they are safe? What's going to happen down there? Because you've got Airdrie picking up points left, right and centre.
The surgeon.
Yeah, Neil Lennon and Dunfermline and Queen's Park seem to be rudderless just now.
I mean, we've seen these types of collapses before, ending in relegation. You know, you go back to the Hibs campaign under Terry Butcher, where no one thought it possible. But the amount of goals they're conceding is quite stark and incredible. You know, you add into that the fact that they're not scoring any goals. I think they would drive to Callum Davidson's house right now to get back in the door just to get a few results over the line. And it just shows how knee-jerk you can be. I don't know what was going on behind the scenes there, but it just seemed like a strange decision. And they're paying for it. They really are, you know, hoping to get this new manager bounce. I think the idea behind it, which I disagree with massively, it's so short-sighted. This idea, you know, at this time in the season, you're 2 or 3 points off the playoffs, 5 or 6 points off the playoffs, whatever it may be. Right, we'll get a new manager and get a bounce for 2 or 3 weeks just so we can get into the playoffs. You know, without any real view to how you're going to be moving forward after that. It's just literally a case of over the next 4 or 5 games, we need to get some results to get to where we want to be in 5 weeks' time. It's a recipe for disaster. Add into that the fact they've not had a new manager bounce, how good Airdrie have been, massive result for Hamilton, and, you know, Dunfermline, you would imagine, might pick up the odd result or two under Neil Lennon. Queen's Park, you know, more than looking over their shoulder, they're jogging backwards at the moment.
Thursday sees the visit of Athletic Bilbao to Ibrox for the first leg of the Europa League quarter-final. Rangers in Europe is one of life's big anomalies this season. First things first, Gemma, from your
This
point...
season, Ray?
Yeah, this season, yeah. Well, Rory, we can say this season because at least when Rangers got to the Europa League final 2 or 3 years ago, they weren't losing week in, week out at home in the league. It was a bit different this time. They're playing Athletic Bilbao, currently 4th in La Liga. Gemma, what do you make of this? So, Unai Simon won't play against Rangers as Julian Aguirre-Zabala plays cup games for them. Are you a fan of that, or would you rather your goalie plays every game?
It depends. It's a fashion, isn't it? It's now what they do. Is ensure that if they, I kind of get it a little bit, that you essentially at the beginning of the season saying that's your team and that's your team. So as a goalkeeper, you have a level of certainty that you know you're going to play. I would tend to stick with the one goalkeeper. I just think that it gives a consistency to your back line. It gives a consistency to your team, but it is what it is. It's what they do. But yeah, and you're right. It is an anomaly. Like this will be a completely different Rangers that turns up as usual. And I'm interested to see how they get on because I think Bilbao are a step up from what they've faced already, even from Fenerbahce. They're a serious outfit. They've done well in the Europa League, and the fact that Rangers have the first game at home, they need to take something from that because going away, I think, plays, well, as you imagine, plays directly into Bilbao's hands. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Rangers turns up. A couple of suspensions in there as well, with Suter not available, Diamonde not available. So it'll be interesting to see what Barry does with this team. Yeah,
Rory, you had Barry Ferguson coming out saying now, after the loss at the weekend, how easy it is to get up for Celtic games and European games. They've had some terrific results. The way winning Fenerbahce that Gemma touched on being the pick of the bunch. How do they perform so well on a Thursday and often fall flat in domestic games?
I think it's a mental weakness domestically, if I'm being totally honest with you. I mean, first and foremost, when you went down the goalkeeper route ahead of Thursday in selections, I thought you were going to talk about Jack Butland and Liam Kelly. Who's going to play? Because I was there on Saturday and another absolute clanger from Jack Butland. To answer your question, everyone's got an opinion on this, and a lot of people talk about the low block, or it's trying to break down teams and all the rest of it. Now, Hibs on Saturday, yes, they probably played slightly deeper than they normally would. The first half, they scored very, very early, and I think Hibs as a team were a little bit uncertain about how they moved forward after that because they retreated. But in the second half, David Gray got hold of them and basically said, look, well, it appeared that he'd said, look, we don't need to be so deep, we can hurt Rangers. Second half, they didn't sit in a low block and defend for their lives. So Rangers had space. Rangers had opportunities to score goals. So yes, there's times where you could argue that it's this defensive mindedness of the opponent and domestically. I just don't think they've got the mental strength to go and win games. I think when the pressure's off, the shackles come off, and people talk about living in Glasgow and how difficult it is, and Goldfish Bowl, and you need to win every week, and how hard it is. And this Rangers squad are living proof that you need, and Barry Ferguson said a few times, you need to be more than a good player to handle that. And too many of these players domestically don't have what it takes to win week in, week out, put pressure on Celtic, and go toe-to-toe with them to try and win a title. Is
that a feeling that is in the recruitment? Sorry, Rory, because Rangers have recruited, and this is what I'm not a Rangers fan, but this is what I feel Rangers fans are scratching their heads at. The quality of player that you have should be better. But Rangers seems to have recruited on the quality of player they can afford, but missed that mentality. But can they? It's not just about that, but can you perform in this situation?
It's hard to recruit mentality, though, isn't it? You need to, and that comes down to a number of things. You need to be able to grow into being a player that can win every week. And I'm not big on this whole, you need to be a certain way to be a Rangers player or a Celtic player. There's clubs all over the world that have an expectation in certain leagues that they have to win every week. It's not exclusive to Rangers and Celtic. They just happen to be another one of those types of clubs where you do have to win every week domestically. You have to beat Hibs at home. That is run of the mill. That is bread and butter. That's the expectation. So the quality of the player they have, they need to somehow instill that belief that they can go and do that. But I think when it comes to the European games, the shackles are off slightly. I don't wholly buy into the idea that it's because teams open up against them in Europe, because I think Hibs did that in the second half. Hibs were simply better.
Well, that's all we get time for. Many thanks to Gemma Fay and Rory Loy, and thank you for listening. Remember, we're here with new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast bright and early every day, so to make sure you don't miss out, subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on your phone. A packed episode today. We've chatted Scotland, we've chatted Championship, we've chatted Rangers in Europe. I think the main takeaway from everything, as Rory Loy pointed out, is Partick Thistle are mathematically safe in the Championship, and that's all we want from life. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.
On BBC Sounds. From life aboard a Russian submarine to chairman of Hearts Football Club.
At this stage, he was the hero.
But as his controversial decisions escalated...
They said, we're going to sack George. And I'm going, you can't do this.
How did Vladimir Romanov go from Hearts saviour to a wanted man?
He caused a whole load of chaos and havoc.
Romanov, Tsar of Hearts. Listen now on BBC Sounds.